let me tell you what has been playing on my mind over the last few days and show you exactly what is coming. There is a new report out now from the government that shows that this inflation reducing bill, I love it. Do you love it, Stu?
Oh,
I love it already.
It's definitely going to reduce inflation. That much I know for sure. It says it right in the name.
Yeah, well, the new government the government report says, no, not going to do that. In fact, it's going to make it worse. And here's the thing that was kind of left out on the edit room floor when everybody was voting for it. And that is that this wonderful Joe Manchin, Joe Biden bill is actually going to put the burden of taxes on everybody, but the lion's share goes on the lower and middle class. 400,000 plus, they're paying their fair share. But it seems as though a lot of money is going to be raised from those wonderful, wonderful people that are just barely surviving now. The taxes are going to be raised beginning next year, and it begins at $30,000 a year. So not only is it going to not reduce inflation, because what's going to happen? They're going to spend this money. They're going to take the money from you, plus the money that we borrow, and they're going to spend it. But how are they going to spend it? They're going to spend it the way they want to spend it. And later on in the program, we'll give you all of the details of where this money is going. But you're going to be relieved. It's going to, the Green New Deal. It's going to all new green projects, which is wonderful. But is that how you'd spend your money? No, of course not. The average American is saying that global warming is the last priority on their list. However, it is the Biden administration's top priority. So when they can't convince you to do a Build Back Better bill, when they can't convince you that global warming should even be in the top 5, what they have to do is take control of your money and spend it the way they want. Now, this isn't really about global warming, as we've told you before. ESG scores are a ruse. It is the largest transfer of wealth in human history. This is the biggest scam in human history, ESG and global warming. That's not to say that global warming isn't happen. All you have to do is read a thermometer. All you have to do is look at the pattern. Global climate change is something that is natural, i.e., the Ice Age. So we have these problems from time to time, and it's just the way the world behaves and the environment behaves. Are we contributing to it? It would make sense to me that, you can't do as much as we have done to the atmosphere and not affect it some way or another. The question is, can we start it, or can we stop it with the plan that has been outlined by Joe Biden? Well, when Joe Biden can't win in Ukraine, his plan in Afghanistan was a complete disaster. His plan for inflation is a complete disaster. His plan, I don't know if you heard this, but he's sick again with COVID. He just was tested again this weekend. He has another case of COVID. When he can't control these things, how is he expected his plan to control the weather? Why does anyone have confidence that that would work? It's not really designed to do that. Here's what it is designed to do. Let me show you the pattern here. What has Joe Biden done with the strategic oil reserve? The strategic oil reserve was filled, and it was we were fine with it. The oil reserve is in case of war, that the United States can fuel its planes and its warships, so we don't have to worry about that in a time of need. If you use the strategic oil reserve is gone within a few days, just from the trucking and all of the transportation on the East Coast alone. It's not made to sustain the entire country and everybody's gas and the trucking gas, okay? So we're depleting that. And everybody has been saying, everybody that I know says that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It doesn't make sense because what are you going to do? Donald Trump filled it up at the lowest possible price because we had an abundance of oil. We were energy independent. So he bought it at the cheapest price and filled it up. Now, Joe Biden has taken and cut our strategic oil reserve, and it continues to go million barrels at a time. Every single day, it is reduced even more. Well, he's made the announcement that he's going to replenish that beginning this fall. Okay, how much money is that costing? And who are we buying it from? This is the first key to understand what's really going on. Remember, we're reshaping the economy. We are becoming a fascistic nation. Take everything you know about fascism and throw it out the window, far as concentration camps and killing Jews and everything else. My Uncle Leo told me one time, because he is talk with your hands Italian, he grew up with Mussolini, and he told me one time with a few belts in him, I'm tired of everyone talking about Mussolini. He was a good man. And I'm like, Uncle Leo, keep that to yourself, okay? But what he was concentrating on was the good part of fascism, if you can call it that. The trains ran on time, okay? Things worked. If you live in Italy or have ever been there, I think I mailed a letter back home when I was staying in Italy for a few weeks when I was about 19 years old. I'm not sure that letter has arrived yet, okay? Nothing works in Italy. So fascism is a way to make things work, or so they say. Centralized government and all the power, and unlike communism, it doesn't take the companies. It has a public-private partnership with companies. That's the fascism that America is now going down the road, led by Joe Biden. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's not a slam. Put your feelings of fascism in neutral. They say capitalism doesn't work. We have to try something new. So we're going to try something new. They just call it System X, going back to the 1940s, because they don't want to call it fascism. But when the United States partners with companies, as they are now doing, i.e. Facebook, Twitter, Google, all of the social media platforms, what are they doing? They are working to suppress people's voices because the government can't do that because of the First Amendment. So what do? They just have a partnership, and they call them up and say, hey, you got to silence these voices. Have you noticed that voices now this weekend are being silenced and people are being pulled off of social media if they define inflation as 2 quarters of negative growth? You can't say that now? That's fascism. So let me get back to the oil. So you're not going to be able to buy gas anymore because it gets more and more expensive. And it's going to get more expensive the minute the government starts to buy oil itself to refill the strategic oil reserve. And it's going to be a huge order of oil. And the government gets to pick which companies get the oil or get the money for the oil. So you should know this from anything in capitalism. When you put in an enormous order and you're the biggest client a store has, do you get better service or worse service? Do they cater to you or do they treat you exactly the same as everyone else? That's the key. they will treat you differently if you're the biggest buyer. So just as we gave money, $60 billion to Ukraine, and they were definitely not a country that was going to okay gay marriage, as soon as we gave them in the middle of war where, their population is in other countries, as soon as we write the check and they cash the check and they have the arms and the money from us, what do? They suddenly pass a law okaying gay marriage. That is not in line with what the people of Ukraine want. That is not in line with the president, Zelensky. It's not in line with their version of Congress. They did it because we said, you're not getting the money unless you do it. Now, how is that going to play with the oil companies? You have a big order coming in for oil. If he buys oil from the United States and from our oil companies, which is not necessarily guaranteed, if he does it with our oil companies, I can guarantee you he will extract more than oil from that company. He will now be the biggest buyer, which will hurt you, but it will also give him the ability to say, you know what, I'm not going to buy your oil. I'm going to buy it from another company. Unless you agree to stop doing X, Y, or Z in oil exploration. Okay, so now let's look at the chip bill. The chip bill was another $250 billion. And the chip bill was what? Was to encourage manufacturing to make more chips here. Okay, well, we all know that that's a good idea. It seems to be the only thing that we think is a good idea. Medicine, make our own vaccines here, make our own medicine here, our own insulin, make it here in the United States. No, don't worry about it. We didn't learn anything from COVID. We can just keep getting all of our medical supplies from China. For some reason, we're doing chips. Okay, I think that's a really good idea. But the way you do it to encourage people to make chips, if you want the government even involved at this level, you cut the red tape and you cut taxes for those companies that are going to make more chips. You give them breathing room so they can do this. Instead, what we did was pass a corporate welfare bill, and the government is giving that to these companies so they will make chips. Now, do you think that that money is going to go to any corporation that is not with social justice? Do you think that money is going to go to any company that doesn't have the right number of women and minorities on the board of directors? Do you think this money is going to anyone that is not all down with the new way of life, the new tomorrow? Do you think it's going to any company that is not green and is on the bandwagon for green? Of course not. The United States government at $250 billion has just become the sugar daddy for chips. You have to think differently. They are creating public-private partnerships. So you no longer control, through demand, what you want. The government is reshaping our entire world and economy by being the biggest buyer of different things. So instead of doing it the right way, they've passed this big bill, and we've seen it before, so we don't freak out. But what you're missing here is the incentive for the government to do it is different this time. It's not because they think it's the best thing for you or even the best thing for the country that you would agree with. They've decided the direction of this country, and so now they're going to put these companies under their thumb. The $700 billion Green Deal. Again, impoverishing you so you don't have the buying power. And then taking that money and spending it the way the government wants to spend it. Because they can't get you to do it, they'll do it for you. This is the way they get to a place where, in the end, you own nothing. But you'll be happy. Well, if you don't own it and I don't own it, who owns it? The government and giant corporations, which makes you a renter. And something that you can't necessarily get what you want, you'll get what the government will give you.